Hey guys, Austin here with Biologic. We're just out here today checking out a few of our food plots that we put in this past year and seeing how some of our clover's doing. So this particular field right here, last year at this time was probably about a 50% stand. It was doing okay, but it wasn't great. We had also just limed it, and so it was just starting to, do a lot better as far as that pH coming up and having that lime have time to neutralize some of the acidity out here in the soil. And it's doing okay. So this past fall, with about a 50% stand of clover. So we came in and drilled a cereal grain blend of ours and let that go. It did really good through the fall and the winter. And of course, coming back in this spring, I thought before, frost seeding season gets out, this would be a great field to frost seed and try to fill in some of these gaps where the clover's doing okay, but then we'll have, spots like this right here where it's just a little bit thin and it's starting to fill in those spots. So we got what I would consider great success out of our frost seeding, and the field's starting to do pretty good. But what we've got is a good many weeds out here, and so some are broadleaf. I can see some little bit of buckhorn plantain, some grasses, different types of grasses all through here. A little bit of blue stem, a little bit of sage grass, all of it that needs to be managed, or this stuff will take over in a couple of months' time, and your clover just won't have a chance to fill in and get nice and thick to where it is the predominant species out here in the field. So what I like to do on these clover fields like this that you planted this past year, frost seeded, and they're starting to do pretty well, but you've got a good many weeds out here, is I like to come in here and mow, knock the cup, probably mow about the first 2 to 3 inches off your top of your clover. That'll get a lot of your broadleaf and weeds with it. And then after you've mowed, say about 10 days to 2 weeks, is to come back in and get ready to spray. And what that's going to do is give those weeds time to get just a little bit of a regrowth, and they'll soak up that herbicide a lot better. So for grasses, I like to use clethodim. There's a lot of varieties out there, different brand names. Helena makes one called Tap Out that's a really good one. It already has a surfactant put in it. And then for my broadleaf weeds, and it also kills some grasses, Imazamox is my favorite broadleaf weed killer. And I actually like to tank mix my clethodim and the Imazamox together. They're very compatible. I'll add some surfactant in there with it just to make sure that I've got plenty for the Imazamox to work. And then I also like to use ammonium sulfate, or AMS. It really seems to help your weeds soak up your herbicide and get a really good kill down into the root. So mow, give your weeds a week, 10 days, 2 weeks time to come back just a little bit, and then spray, because you're going to get a lot better results out of your herbicides when those weeds are young and in a growing stage, versus if you'll just look at here at some of these little perennial grasses that come up in here, they're in the seed stage. And even the wheat and oats that we put in that are coming back, they're all in the seed producing stage. So your grasses just do not soak up herbicide very well. Broadleaf weeds either, when they're in a mature seed production stage. So you want them young. So anything that comes back from your mowing is going to be in a great stage of growth for killing with a herbicide. After your weeds start drying down and your clover's starting to fill in these gaps, that's when I really like to come in and use a foliar herbicide. You can spray with a Ranger, tractor, ATV, whatever you've got to make it work. We've got Clover Max, which is a water, it's actually a liquid fertilizer. And then we've got Mean Green, which is a water soluble fertilizer. Both of them work really well on clovers. And what that's going to do, so we've mowed, we've got our weed control under with our spraying, and then we're going to give our clover a real big boost of growth, feeding it directly through the leaves, foliar feeding, with the Clover Max and the Mean Green. And that's really going to help our clover just really fill in across the field, fill in spots like where we've had ant mounds and there's just thin spots in the field. We want this field to be thick and lush, and for the clover really to outcompete every weed in here, so that maybe by July we're not even having to do anything. It's just out here growing. Deer are going to be hammering it. It's going to be great food for them. Another tip I like to tell people on these clover fields is we've got a lot of wheat and oats towards the back of this field that you can't really see, and some down the edges from where we drilled it. And you can see just from where I took this utilization cage off, the wheat and oats out here are in a seed head production stage. And that's all really good food for your turkeys, especially as it dries down. So I like to leave some of that standing along the edge or in the back of your field in strips, just so I'm leaving some really good food for my turkeys. And obviously we want to make sure before we even think about firing up a mower, bush hog, whatever you use, that we don't have any turkey nest anywhere around this field or on the edge of it, because they will sometimes put a nest out there. But what you'll notice in this stuff is not only is these things just packed full of seed that turkeys love to use, there's tons of insects in there. Stink bugs, caterpillars, grubs, grasshoppers. I stirred all kind of stuff up out of here when I took this utilization cage off a while ago. So something to keep in mind before you mow your fields this time of year is to make sure there's not any sign of any type of turkey nest anywhere around the edge of the field or out in the middle, because we definitely don't want to be running over any type of nest. But that's just a couple of tips and tricks you can use for managing your clover. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the way I found it works really well in this climate here in the southeast, is to mow, spray, kill our weeds, and then come back with some fertilizer and really make that clover take off and fill in these gaps, so that by the time the fall rolls around, you're going to have a super thick, lush clover field. And, you know, we'll be able to hang stands and hunt over it early season because the deer will already be pouring in here all through the summertime. So y'all check out your clover fields this year, see what they need, because taking care of them right now when they're in this really great stage of growth in the early spring is when you want to get them under control from a weed standpoint and make sure that they can really take off and do what they're made to do.